welcome back to the class, everyone. The Order 66 raid has been in full swing for a minute now, and while most of us are either fine-tuning our teams, or at a bare minimum planning which teams we would like to fine-tune, there are a few mechanics out there which are not clearly stated I would love to go over. And the first mechanic, and really the inspiration for this whole video, is one that I came across on accident yesterday, and that is the fact that Hondo can be reused in multiple submitted attempts. And while most of you didn't already know this, anyone who's been playing the game for several years and has participated in other raids with characters like Hoda and 3PO, this probably isn't all that surprising. And it all has to do with the fact that Hondo can escape from battle. If you open as unique, you can see right here that if a captive enemy is defeated and Hondo does not have at least 10 stacks of Ranto, Hondo escapes the battle. And for whatever reason, how the game is coded, when he does this, even though he might show up in the final screenshot as in having participated in the battle, such was the screenshot from yesterday, he will still show as reusable when it comes to going back into the raid. You can see this is the same raid, the one that's about to end in 26 minutes that I have not finished all my runs for. If I actually go to a tier that Hondo could perform in, you will see that I still have him active, despite the fact that he already helped my pirates score this right here. And while this probably isn't all that valuable of information, because if Hondo escaped towards the very beginning of the battle, which is exactly what happened when SM-33 completely rocked Fox while Hondo had him captive, then he probably wasn't pulling that much weight in the raid to begin with. And I would actually argue against that, because this actually specifically helped me a lot, because when we look at the raid's mechanics, one of the things that they really want you to do is take in 5 characters. Because if you take in any less than 5 characters, even 4, then the stacks of execute reduce from 25 down to 15, making Hondo even relevant, even if he doesn't do anything except for escape the battle. Now, I'm not exactly in this position myself, but there are plenty of people out there that are still using Hondo as a solo for a 300,000 max on the very first tier. So if I were to split my teams in a way like this, where I could use Hondo with pirates, and then I could maybe either use him alone, or again, with this Luminara junk team at a lower tier, I could actually maximize my score even more. And while I don't think I would tell anyone to specifically do this, it's nice to know that you can if that exact scenario pops up. So if Hondo escapes, don't necessarily immediately run away from the battle. It actually might be in your favor. Now, the second hidden mechanic that I want to talk about that is not explicitly said, at least within the raid mechanics, is the fact that Lord Vader is a galactic legend. If you go into his kit like we just were earlier, it lists a lot of things about him, like his abilities and what he does for the rest of his team, but it doesn't actually specifically call him a galactic legend. We all know that the playable version of him is, but the raid version, it doesn't clearly say it here. And in fact, this was really hard for me to actually test, because all of our characters that are usable in the raid that have a galactic legend interaction, well, almost all of them, it doesn't matter to begin with. When we look at Crosshair, he has a Zeta that specifically says his attacks ignore protection if there are no galactic legends on the enemy team. This doesn't matter at all, because there's never any protection to hit under. So even if Lord Vader wasn't a galactic legend, this wouldn't matter at all. In the same vein, Scorch has a similar type of interaction, where if there are no enemy galactic legends on the opposite side, he'll inflict 2 stacks of damage over time locked onto the enemy team. This also doesn't matter, because even though the Lord Vader in the game is a galactic legend, and this would stop it anyways, all of his teammates are immune to dots while above 50% health, which is of course what they start the battle off with, a lot more than 50%, 100% in fact. So the only real character that this becomes relevant for is Aayla Secura on her final ability, where it says if all allies were Jedi Vanguard at the start of each encounter and there are no galactic legends, whenever an enemy attacks out of turn, all Jedi Vanguard allies recover 15% health and protection, and the ally they attack dispels all debuffs on themselves. If an enemy is called to assist, all our ally enemies lose 8% turn meter. Which, by the way, that turn meter loss part at the very end, also completely irrelevant, because they're immune to that above a certain threshold as well. So the only part of this that actually matters is the fact that your Jedi Vanguard characters will not recover or dispel when the clones are attacking out of turn to hit them. I can't actually show you proof of this myself, because for this ability to work at all, you have to have Jedi Master Mace Windu. I did watch a Scribe video on it to confirm, or a video of Scribe using Master Mace Windu with Ayla with the Zeta, and it's pretty easy to see that nobody's recovering nor getting anything dispelled. If you would like to verify that, I'm sure there's plenty of other content creators out there who have made videos where you can see that it's not actually doing much. Now, the last thing some people have already figured out, because it actually makes a pretty big difference, and that is the fact that when it comes to the enemy's stats throughout the difficulty tiers, they're not as clear as I think they could be. So when we look at the very first modifier for enemy stats, not their abilities, but their stats, it lists that they get a 70% boost to all these things plus 30 speed. And as you go throughout the tiers, if you were to read this literally, it almost seems like while some of the numbers for the stats are increasing, some of the stats are being entirely left off. What do I mean by that? From tier 1 to tier 2, we see a 70% boost to tenacity, and then tenacity completely disappears here. Between 6 and 7, we see a 135 speed boost, and then no mention of a speed boost at all. And what the game isn't telling us, that probably is self-explanatory to some people, is if the number did not increase for the bonus, whatever previous bonus existed in the previous tier is going to continue. I realize that may be a little bit confusing, but I find this whole thing confusing. You know that they thought this was going to be a problem in some way, because they did make sure to at least reference the fact that the bonus offense stacks with all subsequent tiers, but they didn't do that with like any of the other stats. You can see here as well that crit damage, there's a 70% boost to crit damage in tier 1. You go down to tier 2, and it start talking about things that are 120%, doesn't mention crit damage, which doesn't necessarily just mean that they don't get 120% crit damage. It means that they're still going to maintain the 70%. If you want to actually test this out, it's pretty easy. I can go into the very highest tier right now with my Tarkin, who is at 296 speed. The speed itself isn't all that important. What is important is you see that when we load right into this, that the enemy Fox is at about 98% turn meter or something like that. This is the very last tier at R9, where if we were to read this literally, there is no speed bonus. However, if I go to the previous one, where there's very clearly a speed bonus of 135, and I take Tarkin in, you'll see that they're not 135 speed faster than me. In fact, they're the same exact speed, because that 135 speed that was mentioned in, tier 6, also is going to continue into tier 7. So the best way to think about this, if you want to think about this at all, is that if a bonus disappears from one to the next, it's not that it is gone, it's that it is going to be retained at the previous value talked about. So for example, offense is mentioned in both, this one for 10,000, this one for 9,000. You're not stacking 19,000 offense, you're just getting an upgrade from the 9,000 to the 10,000, and the speed not being mentioned just means that it didn't get a boost, but it is still relevant. I feel like they could have made this clear. I feel like they should have just listed every single bonus out every time, just like tier 1 did. Instead, I had to like do testing and talk with people and try to figure that out. But at any rate, those are the 3 raid mechanics that were not clearly laid out, hidden if you will. Thank you guys for watching. Until the next time, stay awesome.